Greetings, welcome to CS295, week 3, PHP Basics. We are on variables in this lesson. And again, assuming you already know a little bit of JavaScript as we go into this. So when we look at the code and talk about and try it out, we'll kind of talk about the differences more than anything, right? So we already went over, this is how you add PHP, right? Whatever you put in here, this is where it's going to execute, and just as importantly, this is where it's going to show up, right? I showed you that when I right-clicked and then inspect the elements. So let's look at variable. And it works just like every other programming language. For the most part, you create the variable and then you assign it to whatever you want, right? That's this is a string, you have integers, Boolean, right? Pretty much everything you can have in most other languages, that all works the same. There's one key difference. Besides, of course, there's a $sign in front of it, right? But JavaScript had var. If you've used Python, there's nothing. And then other languages, you have to actually specify what it is. But there's one key difference besides, right? This is what tells it it's a variable, is when you call it, right, you have to use it again. So that is one major point. You might also notice one other thing, and that is in JavaScript, you use a plus sign to concatenate. In PHP, use a period. All right, so go ahead, watch this video if you haven't already, and then we're going to jump right into trying this out. All right, so that's the key, right? That piece right there. So we're going to head on over, create a variables.php, wherever you might have in WAMP 00 web host, and then let's look, right? So we already have our stuff from the last one. I am now going to make this look a little neater. All right, so we have echo hello world. We saw that you can add HTML into that, and it'll work. But let's make a variable, right? So $my var, way too many letters, equals test, right? So we now have a variable. That's it, right? That's all there is to it. We got numbers. We can do math with it, right? If we wanted to do my num equals 5, and then my num2 equals 5 plus my num. All right, so we can do all the standard things you can do with variables. The key is now when we go to use it, so let's put this into an H1. Now, I do recommend when you start concatenate and when you actually start to use code HTML in it, in your echo statements, that you use the single quotes, and I'll show you in a second why. But again, I got my H1, and then I close my H1. Now, here's why, right? So if I give this an ID, which again, we can totally echo this out, and as we learn more, you'll be able to do if statements and whatnot. But we can do if is, I'm going to use double quotes because that's what I'm used to in HTML. So I have my double quotes, and we'll just call this test, right? So we now have this. If we had double quotes here, you'll notice that now becomes a string, and then it's like, what's going on here? And that turned black. So what I like to do is single quote on the outside. Now, that does mean, however, if you start to use the actual single quotes, like don't, right, now it breaks again. But that said, there's a little symbol above the tab key that kind of looks like one of those. So that's what I like to use when you're trying to echo inside of the echo. So this is something you can use for that. But again, to concatenate, dot, we have to end it, dot is what I like to do. All right, so that ends, that means all of this is a string, concatenate my var, and then dot, and here's the second half of it. And then, you know, if we wanted to echo the number, we could echo my num2. And there we go, right? There's variables in a nutshell. So if I save and close this, and I preview it, you can see everything is there, and I'll expect. So again, You can see I had all that code inside of this. So there's the BR from the hello world that I echoed. There it is, and then we have my test, ID test, and then it spit out 10 because 5 plus 5 equals 10. And we can change this real quick to 2, save it. Now that I already have this open, I can just save it, refresh this, and there we go, 7, right? 5 plus 2 is 7. So that's it for variables, right? I mean, in the grand scheme of variables, there's not a whole lot to it other than just realizing you got to use that $sign. And this includes, as we go to other things, your functions, your if statements. Like anytime you're referencing a variable, it has that $sign in front of it. All right, that's all I have for variables. We'll see you next lesson.